I stared at my phone screen, reading the message for the third time, as if the words might rearrange themselves into something less devastating. Mom, Dylan got us a reservation at Le Bernardier. You understand, right? It's impossible to get a table there. Save the cake for us. My 56th birthday. The first one I'd actually wanted to celebrate since Thomas died 8 years ago. And my daughter had just canceled on me 30 minutes before she was supposed to arrive, choosing a luxury restaurant over her mother's homemade chocolate cake. I stood in my kitchen, the smell of Belgian chocolate still heavy in the air. 3 hours I'd spent on that cake. 3 layers, ganache filling, the works. The same recipe I'd made for every one of Vanessa's birthdays since she was 5 years old. The table was set for 3. I was wearing the blue dress she'd given me last Christmas, probably the last genuine gift I'd received from her before Dylan started poisoning everything. I looked at the 56 candles sitting in their box on the counter, waiting to be placed. The apartment was spotless. I'd even put out the good china, the set that had belonged to Thomas's grandmother. For what? So my daughter could text me a kiss emoji and abandon me for white tablecloths and $100 entrees? Something inside me went very still. Not the hot rush of anger I'd expected. Not tears. Just this cold, crystalline clarity that I'd been an idiot for far too long. I picked up the candles and started pushing them into the cake, one by one. 56 tiny reminders of 56 years on this earth. 56 years of building a life, raising a daughter, becoming a widow, and apparently learning nothing about when to stop giving and start protecting myself. When all the candles were in place, I lit them. Every single one. The kitchen filled with their warm glow, and for a moment I almost felt pathetic. Helena Winters, successful interior design consultant with a multi-million-dollar client list, singing happy birthday to herself in an empty apartment while her only child ate oysters and drank champagne somewhere across town. But I sang it anyway, quietly, just for me. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Helena. Happy birthday to you. I closed my eyes and made a wish. Then I blew out all 56 candles in one long breath. When I opened my eyes, I was done. Done being the backup plan. Done being the ATM that never asked for receipts. Done swallowing hurt to avoid making waves. I pulled out my phone and started typing. The message I sent back was simple. Of course, sweetheart. Have a wonderful dinner. The cake will be waiting. Then I walked into my office and opened the filing cabinet where I'd been keeping documents for the past 2 years. Documents I'd told myself I'd never actually use. Proof of every dollar I'd given them. Bank transfers. Cashier's checks. The closing documents from when I'd paid $85,000 for the down payment on their apartment 3 years ago. I'd never called it a loan. Never put anything in writing. Because you don't do that with family, right? You just give and trust that love and gratitude will be enough. Except it wasn't enough. It was never going to be enough. I pulled out my laptop and opened the draft email I'd written 3 weeks ago, after the 4th time Vanessa had canceled lunch, claiming she was swamped at work, only for me to see her Instagram post 2 hours later, showing her at an $80 brunch with her girlfriends. I'd consulted a lawyer that week, a family law specialist who'd looked at my documentation and nodded slowly, professionally, before telling me exactly what my options were. Legally, he'd said, without a written agreement specifying it was a gift, you can claim it was a loan, especially with this amount of money. You have grounds to request repayment with reasonable interest. I'd thanked him, paid his consultation fee, and walked out thinking I'd never actually do it, because I'm not that kind of mother. I'm not the kind of woman who sues her own daughter. Except maybe I was. Maybe I needed to be. I spent the next hour refining the letter I'd draft-written weeks ago during a moment of frustration I thought I'd get over. But I wasn't getting over this. I was done getting over things. The letter was perfect, concise, legal, cold as ice and twice as sharp. I printed it on my good stationery, the cream-colored paper with my name embossed at the top. Helena Winters. Not Mom. Not your loving mother who you can walk all over forever. Just my name, with all the authority and self-respect it deserved. I put the letter in an envelope along with copies of the bank transfers, the closing documents, and the lawyer's preliminary assessment. I sealed it, wrote Vanessa and Dylan on the front in my best handwriting, and propped it against the cake in the refrigerator where they'd be sure to see it when they came to collect their dessert. Then I poured myself a glass of the Bordeaux I'd bought for dinner, the expensive bottle I'd been saving. I took it into my bedroom, closed the door, and sat in the chair by the window, looking out at the Boston skyline. I thought about Thomas. God, I missed him. He would have known what to do years ago. He would have seen through Dylan's charm the moment Vanessa brought him home. Thomas had always been better at reading people than I was. He had this quiet way of setting boundaries without being cruel, of making expectations clear without having to spell them out. But Thomas was gone, and I'd been trying to be everything for Vanessa ever since. Mother and father, friend and therapist, cheerleader and safety net. And somewhere along the way, she'd started treating me like I was obligated to provide all of that. Forever, no questions asked, no gratitude required. I checked my phone. 7:30. They'd be at the restaurant by now, probably already through their appetizers. I wondered if Vanessa felt even the slightest bit guilty. If she'd looked at the menu prices and thought about me sitting alone with a homemade cake? Probably not. Dylan would have made some joke about how I understood, how I was cool like that, and she would have laughed and agreed because that's what she did now. She agreed with Dylan. At 9:15, another text came through. Mom, we're leaving soon. The cake is still good, right? Dylan is craving something sweet. I stared at that message for a long time. The heart emoji. The casual assumption that of course the cake was still good. That of course I'd be happy to provide dessert after they'd spent $300 on dinner without me on my birthday. Something broke in me then. Not in a dramatic, shattering way. More like a lock clicking open. A door I'd been holding shut for years, finally swinging wide. I typed back, yes, it's in the fridge. Let yourselves in, I'm already in bed. Early night. Then I turned off my bedroom light, so they'd believe I was asleep. But I sat in that chair by the window, wide awake, sipping my wine in the dark, listening. At 10:45, I heard the key in the lock. The key I'd given them for emergencies that Dylan used like he owned the place. I heard Vanessa's voice first, loud and bright, laughing at something on her phone. Then Dylan's deeper rumble, saying something I couldn't quite make out. Mom? Vanessa called. You here? I stayed silent, stayed still. She must have gone to bed already, Vanessa said, and there was no guilt in her voice, no concern that maybe her 56-year-old mother had gone to bed early on her birthday because she'd been left alone. Just acceptance. Of course Mom went to bed. Of course she's fine. Mom's always fine. Good, Dylan said. I didn't want to deal with any guilt trip tonight. Let's just grab the cake and go. I closed my eyes, let myself feel the full weight of that. He'd expected a guilt trip. He'd been prepared to endure his mother-in-law's hurt feelings as some kind of inconvenience, and Vanessa hadn't contradicted him. I heard the refrigerator open, then silence, long, stretching silence. Dylan, Vanessa's voice was small now, scared. Dylan, there's an envelope here with our names on it. So, probably a birthday card or something. Just grab the cake. No, it's thick, and it's sealed. Dylan, I think we should read it. More silence. Then the sound of paper tearing. I imagined them standing in my kitchen, their expensive dinner sitting heavy in their stomachs, reading the words I'd written. Querida Vanessa and Dylan, the letter began. I knew it by heart. I'd revised it a dozen times until every word was perfect. The cake is in the refrigerator. You can take it. You can also take the keys to the apartment that's registered in your names, because as of Monday morning, officially, it's not yours anymore. My lawyer will be filing a petition for full reimbursement of the $85,000 I paid for your down payment, plus market rate interest for the past 3 years, totaling $104,750. You have 90 days to refinance and reimburse me, or the apartment will be placed in judicial auction to recover my investment. This isn't revenge. It's simply business, something Dylan should understand well. The wedding I financed was a gift. The apartment was a loan without interest that I'm now collecting with legal interest. Consult a lawyer. The cake is free. Happy birthday to me. Helena. I heard something that might have been a gasp or a sob. Then Dylan's voice, loud and angry. She's lost her mind. She can't do this. This is insane. Dylan, she attached bank statements and legal documents and a letter from a lawyer. Oh my God, Dylan, she's serious. Well, she can't just. We don't have this money. She knows we don't have this money. What the hell does she expect us to do? I don't know. I don't know. Vanessa was crying now, really crying. Mom, please come out here. We need to talk about this. I didn't move, didn't respond. I sat in my dark bedroom, listening to my daughter fall apart in my kitchen, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Power, control over my own life, the satisfaction of finally standing up for myself. She's not coming out, Dylan said after a moment. She planned this. She's been planning this. What kind of mother does this to her own kid? The kind who spent 3 hours making a birthday cake that her daughter ditched for a restaurant, I whispered to myself in the darkness. The kind who paid $85,000 and never heard thank you. The kind who's done being a doormat. I heard them leaving, their voices fading down the hallway. Neither of them took the cake. I checked later. It was still sitting in the refrigerator, 56 candles melted into the frosting, waiting for people who would never appreciate it. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, phone on silent, watching the notifications pile up. Missed calls, text messages, voicemails. I'd listen to them in the morning. Tonight, I just needed to sit with what I'd done. And for the first time in 8 years, since the day Thomas died and left me alone with a daughter who would slowly forget how to value me, I felt like myself again. Helena Winters. Not a wallet, not a backup plan, not someone who could be discarded when something better came along. Just me, finally standing up for myself, finally drawing a line. The cake sat in the fridge for 3 days before I threw it away. By then, it had gone stale, but I didn't care. I'd already gotten what I needed from it. A birthday wish that actually came true. I need to go back to before the letter, before the ruined birthday, before everything turned so cold between us. Because Vanessa wasn't always like this, and I wasn't always the kind of mother who would threaten her own daughter with legal action. There was a time when we were close, really close. Thomas died on a Tuesday in March, 8 years ago. He was 52 years old, and he dropped dead of a massive heart attack in the parking lot of his architecture firm. No warning, no chronic condition we'd been managing. Just there one moment, gone the next. The doctor said he probably didn't feel much pain. I didn't find that comforting. Vanessa was 21, finishing her last semester at Boston University. She was studying marketing, living in a dorm, planning a post-graduation trip to Europe with her friends. She had her whole life mapped out, and none of that map included losing her father before she turned 22. I called her from the hospital. I still remember exactly how I said it, because the words felt like they were coming from someone else's mouth. "Sweetheart, there's been an accident. It's Dad, he's gone." She screamed, actually screamed into the phone. Then she hung up, and 20 minutes later, she burst through the emergency room doors, mascara running down her face, still wearing her pajama pants and an oversized BU sweatshirt. She grabbed onto me, and we both cried until we couldn't breathe. That was the last time we were truly honest with each other about pain. In the months after Thomas died, Vanessa moved back home. She finished her degree remotely, barely passing her final classes. We were both zombies, moving through a house that felt too big and too quiet, without Thomas's terrible jokes and his habit of singing off-key in the shower. I threw myself into work. My interior design consultancy had always been successful. But after Thomas died, I became obsessive about it. I took on bigger clients, more ambitious projects. I renovated the corporate headquarters of a pharmaceutical company for $2.3 million. I designed the executive suites for a law firm that had 30 partners. Work was the only place where I felt competent, where I felt like I had control over something. And I took care of Vanessa. Maybe too much. Probably too much. She got her first job at a small marketing agency, making $42,000 a year. She complained constantly about how little it paid, how her apartment share in Alston was tiny and depressing, how she couldn't afford the lifestyle her college friends were living. So I helped. I paid her car insurance. I covered her health insurance until she turned 26. I sent her money for emergencies that turned out to be concert tickets and weekend trips to New York. I told myself I was being a good mother, that Thomas would have wanted me to take care of our baby girl, that I had the money and she was struggling and what kind of parent wouldn't help. But the truth I'm only now willing to admit, is that I was terrified of losing her too. Thomas was gone. Vanessa was all I had left, and if buying her love with money and constant availability was what it took to keep her in my life, then that's what I'd do. She met Dylan 3 years ago at some networking event her company hosted. He was 28, worked in car sales, and had the kind of easy charm that made people trust him instantly. He was handsome in a generic way, tall and blonde, with a smile that showed too many teeth. Vanessa brought him to Sunday dinner at my place after they'd been dating for 2 months, and I could tell she was already in love. I tried to like him. I really did. He said all the right things, complimented the meal I'd cooked, asked me intelligent questions about my work. But there was something about the way his eyes would drift around my apartment, taking inventory, the way he'd ask casual questions about my business, about my client list, about the neighborhood property values. Thomas would have spotted it immediately, but I didn't want to see it, because Vanessa was happy, happier than she'd been since her father died, and I wasn't going to be the mother who ruined that for her. They got engaged after 8 months. Dylan proposed at some fancy restaurant, had the whole thing filmed by a surprise photographer he'd hired. Vanessa posted about it on every social media platform she had, showing off the ring, a 2-carat diamond that I later learned Dylan had financed at 22% interest. The wedding planning started immediately, and that's when I first understood what I was dealing with. Vanessa wanted a big wedding. Not massive, but nice. A waterfront venue, a live band, past appetizers, open bar. She came to me one Sunday with a budget spreadsheet and tears in her eyes. "Mom, we can't afford this. Dylan's family can barely contribute anything. And even if we save everything for 2 years, we'll only have enough for something small. I don't want small. This is my wedding. This is the only one I'm ever going to have." She said it like she was asking permission to be sad, like she needed me to validate her disappointment. "How much would you need?" I asked. She bit her lip. $43,000 for everything we want. I wrote the check that afternoon. $43,000, drawn from the investment account Thomas and I had built together over 23 years of marriage. Money we'd saved for retirement, for emergencies, for Vanessa's future. I told myself it was for Vanessa's future, her wedding day, the start of her married life. Dylan was there when I gave her the check. He hugged me, called me the best mother-in-law anyone could ask for, told me he'd take care of my daughter forever. Vanessa cried and thanked me a dozen times. Neither of them ever mentioned it again. The wedding was beautiful. Vanessa looked stunning in her dress, $2,000 from a boutique in Back Bay. Dylan looked handsome in his rented tux. They danced to Ed Sheeran and cut a 4-tier cake and did all the traditional things that couples do. I sat at my table, watching my daughter spin on the dance floor, and felt Thomas's absence like a physical weight on my chest. He should have been there. He should have walked her down the aisle. He should have given the father-daughter dance. Instead, Vanessa danced with her uncle, Thomas's brother Mark, and it was sweet but wrong. All wrong. That night, at the end of the reception, Vanessa hugged me tight and whispered, "Thank you, Mom, for everything. I love you so much." I held on to that thank you for 3 years. It was the last genuine one I ever got. The apartment came next. 6 months after the wedding, they showed up at my place for Sunday dinner looking stressed. Vanessa did most of the talking, while Dylan sat there looking appropriately concerned. "Mom, our lease is up in 3 months, and we want to buy instead of renting anymore. Dylan's been saving, and we have some money set aside, but we're short on the down payment. We found this perfect place in South End, 2 bedrooms, lots of light, close to Dylan's dealership. But we need $85,000 for the down payment to avoid PMI, and we only have 40. I should have said no. I should have suggested they look at cheaper neighborhoods, save for another year, consider a smaller place. But Vanessa was sitting at my dining room table, in the chair where Thomas used to sit, looking at me with those hopeful eyes, and I couldn't do it. "I'll cover the difference," I said. $45,000. "Actually," Dylan spoke up for the first time, "we'd need 85. The 40 we have needs to cover closing costs and moving expenses." I looked at him, really looked at him. He held my gaze, didn't flinch, just waited. "Fine," I said. 85,000. Vanessa jumped up and hugged me. Dylan shook my hand firmly, professionally, like we'd just closed a business deal, which I suppose we had. We'll pay you back, Vanessa promised. Once Dylan makes senior sales manager and I get promoted. It might take a few years, but we'll pay you back. I nodded, smiled, wrote another check from Thomas's and my life savings. They never paid back a cent, never even mentioned it again. Not once, but they started pulling away. Slowly at first. Sunday dinners became every other Sunday, then once a month, then only on holidays. Vanessa stopped calling just to chat. Our conversations became transactional, surface level. She'd ask about my health, I'd ask about her job, we'd both say we were fine, and that would be it. I noticed Dylan's influence everywhere. The way Vanessa started dressing, more expensive labels she couldn't afford. The restaurants they'd post about on Instagram, places with $100 entrees. The casual comments about how cramped my apartment seemed compared to their place, even though I had square footage and they had a mortgage they couldn't really afford. I started seeing concerning things, like the time I was at their apartment and saw a stack of credit card statements on the counter, minimum payments highlighted in Dylan's handwriting, or when Vanessa mentioned casually that they'd opened a store card at Nordstrom to buy furniture, even though they'd just told me they were being really careful with money. But the worst part, the part that really killed me, was watching my daughter become someone I didn't recognize. Someone shallow and status-obsessed and incapable of genuine gratitude. Someone who took, and never once stopped to wonder if maybe her mother needed something too. 14 months ago, I paid 3 car payments for Dylan. He called me directly, which he never did, and said they were having a rough month, that a big commission had fallen through, that they were going to lose the BMW if someone didn't cover the payments. He asked for a loan, just temporary. I transferred $3,100. Dylan texted me a thumbs-up emoji. That was it. No thank you. No follow-up. Certainly no repayment. And Vanessa never mentioned it at all. That's when I first went to see the lawyer. Not because I was ready to do anything, but because I needed someone to tell me I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't a bad mother for feeling used, that it was okay to be angry. He reviewed everything I brought, nodded slowly, and said, "Mrs. Winters, you've been extraordinarily generous. Some might say, too generous. If you ever decide you want to formalize these arrangements, you have legal options." I thanked him, paid his fee, and walked out, thinking I'd never actually use those options. Until my birthday. Until that text message. Until I sat alone in my apartment with a homemade cake and realized that nothing was ever going to change unless I changed it. So I did. The first 48 hours after I left that letter were chaos. Pure, unfiltered chaos. My phone didn't stop. Saturday night, after they left my apartment without the cake, I had 17 missed calls before I finally turned the sound off. By Sunday morning, there were 47 messages waiting. Voicemails from Vanessa, crying and begging. Texts from Dylan, alternating between angry demands and attempts at manipulation. Even a few messages from people I barely knew. Friends of theirs who'd apparently been recruited to guilt me into backing down. I read every single one, listened to every voicemail, but I didn't respond. Not yet. Sunday afternoon, Vanessa showed up at my building. The doorman called up, asking if I wanted to let her in. I could hear her voice in the background, high and desperate. "Please, just tell her I need to talk to her, please." "Tell her I'm not available," I said calmly. I watched from my window as she left the building 20 minutes later, shoulders slumped, walking slowly to her car like someone had knocked the wind out of her. Part of me wanted to run down there, to fix it, to make it better like I always did. But I stayed exactly where I was. That night, Dylan tried. He called from Vanessa's phone, probably hoping I'd answer if I saw her name. I picked up, just to hear what he'd say. "Helena." His voice was tight, controlled. "We need to talk about this situation like adults. I'm listening. This is insane. You can't just demand $100,000 from your own daughter. Do you understand what you're doing? You're going to make us homeless. We'll lose everything. Then you should have thought about that before you spent $320 on dinner on my birthday and didn't even invite me." Silence. Then, "So this is what this is about? You're going to ruin our lives over a birthday dinner?" "No, Dylan. I'm collecting on a loan I should have formalized 3 years ago. This has nothing to do with one dinner. This has to do with 3 years of being treated like an ATM. 3 years of watching my daughter forget what gratitude looks like. 3 years of you poisoning her against me. That's ridiculous. You called me a controlling old woman in a text to Vanessa 6 months ago. You told her she needed to set boundaries with me. You've systematically isolated her from the one person who's been there for her unconditionally since her father died. Don't insult my intelligence by pretending otherwise. Another silence, longer this time. When he spoke again, his voice was different, colder. You're making a huge mistake. Family doesn't do this to family. You're right, family doesn't, which is why I'm done pretending you and I are family. Put Vanessa back on. She doesn't want to talk to you. Then she has 90 days to find $104,750. The clock started Saturday night. Good luck, Dylan. I hung up. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from adrenaline, from the rush of finally saying the things I'd been swallowing for years. Monday morning, I went to work like nothing had happened. I had a 10 o'clock meeting with a potential client, a tech startup that wanted to renovate their office space. They had a budget of $800,000 and ambitious ideas about collaborative workspaces and biophilic design. I pitched them a concept that made the CEO lean forward in his chair, nodding. "This is exactly what we're looking for," he said. "When can you start? I can have preliminary designs to you by Friday." We shook hands. I left that meeting with a signed contract and a 30% deposit, $240,000, more than twice what Vanessa and Dylan owed me. The irony wasn't lost on me. My assistant Jennifer caught me in the hallway outside my office. She was 28, sharp as hell, and had worked for me for 3 years. She knew when something was wrong. "You okay?" she asked quietly. "You seem different." "I'm fine. Better than fine, actually. Your daughter called here Friday. 4 times. I told her you were in meetings. If she calls again, same answer. Indefinitely." Jennifer raised an eyebrow, but didn't push. "Got it." That afternoon, my lawyer called. Richard Morrison, 63 years old, silver hair, expensive suits, and a reputation for being absolutely ruthless when his clients needed him to be. "Mrs. Winters, I wanted to let you know I've received a call from a Daniel Chen, attorney for Vanessa and Dylan Hartley. He'd like to discuss the matter of the loan repayment." "Already? That was fast?" "They're taking this seriously. He's asking for a meeting, all parties present, to discuss potential resolution options." "What kind of resolution options?" He wouldn't specify, but I suspect they're going to ask for more time, possibly try to negotiate the interest rate down, maybe even argue that it was a gift, not a loan. It was documented as a transfer for a down payment. I have the paperwork. Yes, and that's in your favor. But families are complicated, as you know. Courts don't like to see parents suing children. They'll look for any excuse to rule it as a gift. So what do you recommend? I recommend we take the meeting, hear what they have to say, but go in firm on your position. This is a loan, you want repayment with interest, and you're willing to be flexible on the timeline, but not on the principle. How flexible? That's up to you. How angry are you? I thought about that. About the birthday cake melting in my fridge. About years of canceled lunches and forgotten thank yous and being taken for granted. About Dylan's smirk and Vanessa's entitlement and my own stupid, endless generosity. I'm not angry, I said slowly. I'm done. But I'm not trying to destroy them. I just want my money back and my dignity restored. Then we can work with that. I'll set up the meeting for next week. The meeting was scheduled for the following Tuesday at 2 p.m. in Richard's office downtown. I spent the week working on my tech startup project, throwing myself into color palettes and furniture specs and spatial planning. Work was my sanctuary. It always had been. Vanessa tried reaching me 6 more times that week. I didn't answer. She sent long text messages, essays really, talking about how hurt she was, how she couldn't believe I was doing this, how Dad would be ashamed of me. That last one stung, but I didn't let it land. Thomas would have done this years ago. He would have seen Dylan coming from a mile away and shut it down before it got this far. Sunday night, my phone rang at 11 p.m. It was Vanessa's number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Mom?" Her voice was small, broken. "Mom, please. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Please don't do this." I closed my eyes. "Vanessa, I know I messed up. I know I took you for granted. I know I've been a terrible daughter, but please, please don't take our home away. We can't afford to refinance. We can barely afford the mortgage we have. If you force us to come up with that money, we'll lose everything. Then maybe you shouldn't have lived beyond your means for the past 3 years. I know, you're right. I know you're right. But Mom, please, can't we figure something else out? I'll do anything. I'll pay you back, I promise. Just give us more time. How much more time, Vanessa? Another 3 years? 5? 10? When were you planning to even start paying me back? Because in 3 years, you've never once mentioned it. Not once. Silence. Then, in an even smaller voice, Dylan said you'd never actually ask for it back. He said it was a gift, that parents don't expect their kids to pay them back for help. And there it was. The truth I'd been avoiding. Dylan had known exactly what he was doing. He'd positioned me as the bank that would never call in its loans, and Vanessa had believed him because it was easier than facing what they'd done. I'm not a bank, Vanessa. I'm your mother, and I deserve better than this. I know. You do. You're right. Mom, what do I have to do? Tell me what to do to fix this. Come to the meeting on Tuesday. With your lawyer, we'll discuss options. What kind of options? That depends on what you're willing to commit to. But Vanessa, I need you to understand something. This isn't about punishment. This is about respect, about reciprocity, about you finally understanding that my love and my money are not infinite resources you can drain without consequence. She was crying now, really sobbing. I understand. I do. I'll be there Tuesday. Mom, I love you. I really do love you. I love you too, baby. But love isn't enough anymore. Not without respect. I hung up before she could respond. I sat in my dark living room for a long time after that, staring at the city lights through my window, wondering if I was doing the right thing, wondering if Thomas would approve, wondering if I was being too harsh, or not harsh enough, or if there even was a right answer in situations like this. Tuesday came. I dressed in my best suit, navy blue Armani that Thomas had bought me for my 50th birthday. I pulled my hair back in a sleek bun, put on my pearls, wore my most expensive heels. I looked like exactly what I was, a successful woman who would not be taken advantage of anymore. Richard's office was on the 23rd floor of a glass building in the financial district. His conference room had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor. Vanessa and Dylan were already there when I arrived, sitting on one side of the long mahogany table with their lawyer, Daniel Chen. He was younger than Richard, maybe 40, with wire-rimmed glasses and an earnest expression. Vanessa looked terrible. No makeup, hair in a messy ponytail, wearing jeans and a wrinkled blouse. She'd lost weight. Dylan looked angry, his jaw tight, his hands clenched on the table. Neither of them looked at me when I walked in. Richard gestured to the seats across from them. I sat down, smoothed my skirt, folded my hands calmly on the table. "Thank you all for coming," Richard began. "I think we can keep this civil and productive. Mr. Chen, you requested this meeting. Would you like to start?" Daniel cleared his throat. "Yes, thank you. Mrs. Winters, my clients want to acknowledge that they've hurt you, and they regret that deeply. They understand that you've been generous with them over the years, and they haven't shown appropriate gratitude. They'd like to apologize and work toward repairing the relationship." I waited. He continued. "However, they're prepared to argue, if necessary, that the down payment for their apartment was a gift, not a loan. There was no promissory note, no written agreement, no payment schedule established. In the eyes of the law, a transfer between a parent and child for something like a home purchase is typically considered a gift unless explicitly stated otherwise." Richard smiled slightly. "Interesting interpretation. However, my client has documentation showing that the funds were specifically designated for a down payment, that the clients explicitly promised repayment, and that there's a pattern of financial transactions between the parties that suggests a lending relationship rather than a gifting one." "What pattern?" Dylan spoke for the first time, his voice sharp. Richard slid a folder across the table. "The $3,100 Mrs. Winters transferred to your account 14 months ago for car payments. The multiple smaller transfers over the past 3 years. The wedding costs, which were substantial. All of these create a context." "The wedding was clearly a gift," Daniel interjected. "That's standard parental contribution." "Perhaps," Richard said. but everything taken together paints a picture of a relationship where Mrs. Winters repeatedly provided financial assistance with the expectation of eventual repayment, or at minimum, gratitude and reciprocity. Vanessa started crying. "Mom, please, just tell us what you want. What do we have to do?" I looked at her, really looked at her. She looked young suddenly, younger than 29, like she'd just realized that actions have consequences and the world isn't as forgiving as her mother has always been. "I want my money back," I said calmly, "with reasonable interest, and I want you to understand why this is happening. This isn't about the birthday dinner, although that was certainly the breaking point. This is about 3 years of watching you take me for granted. 3 years of canceled plans and broken promises and treating me like I only matter when you need something." "I know," she whispered. "You're right. So here's what I'm proposing." I pulled out my own folder, one I'd prepared with Richard over the weekend. "You have 2 options. Option 1, you refinance or sell the apartment, pay me back in full within 90 days, and we part ways. You'll have your independence, I'll have my money, and we can both move on with our lives." Dylan's face went red. "That's insane. We can't—" "I'm not finished. Option 2, you sign a formal loan agreement, $104,750, to be repaid over 48 months at 3% interest. That's $2,350 a month. The interest is below market rate, which is my concession. In exchange, you agree to attend family therapy with me for a minimum of 6 months. Dylan pays for the therapy himself, not from joint accounts, because this mess started with him and he needs to take responsibility for it." I slid the papers across the table. "These are the terms, non-negotiable. You have until end of business Friday to decide which option you want." Vanessa grabbed the papers with shaking hands. Dylan leaned over to read them, his face getting darker with each line. "This is extortion," he said. "No," Richard replied smoothly. "This is a settlement offer. Mrs. Winters could proceed with formal litigation, which would cost everyone significantly more in legal fees and cause considerable damage to all parties' reputations. This is the generous option." "Generous?" Dylan laughed bitterly. "She's demanding we pay her over $2,000 a month for 4 years and go to therapy? How is that generous? The alternative is, I sue you in court, win because I have documentation and you have excuses, and you lose the apartment anyway, plus legal fees," I said quietly. "This way, you get to keep your home. You get to make payments you can actually afford if you cut back on the luxury dinners and the designer clothes and the lifestyle you've been funding with credit cards. And maybe, just maybe, we figure out how to be a family again. That's the generous part, Dylan. I'm giving you a chance to fix this." Vanessa was reading the terms, tears streaming down her face. "Mom, we can't afford $2,350 a month. We're already struggling with the mortgage and the car payments and—" "Then sell the BMW," I said. "Buy a Honda. Cancel the premium cable package. Stop eating out 5 times a week. Stop buying clothes you don't need from stores you can't afford. Live within your means for the first time in your adult life. You don't understand? I understand perfectly. I understand that you spend $320 on one dinner while I sit alone on my birthday with a homemade cake. I understand that you post photos of expensive brunches on Instagram while canceling lunch with me because you're too busy. I understand that you've confused lifestyle with life and appearance with happiness, and I'm done enabling it." The room went silent. Vanessa stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time. Dylan looked like he wanted to flip the table. Daniel Chen was taking notes quietly, probably already planning his strategy if this went to litigation. "You have until Friday," Richard repeated. 5 p.m. After that, we proceed with formal action." I stood up, smoothed my skirt again, looked at my daughter one more time. "I love you, Vanessa. I've always loved you, but I'm done being the person you take from without giving back. Make your choice." I walked out of that conference room with my head high, Richard following behind me. We didn't speak until we got to the elevator. "That was well done," he said. "You held your ground. Will they take the deal?" They'd be idiots not to, but people do stupid things when they're angry and embarrassed. The elevator doors opened. I stepped in. Then I guess we'll find out on Friday how stupid they are. Friday came slower than I expected. Each day felt like a week, every hour stretching impossibly long. I threw myself into work, finalizing the tech startup designs, meeting with fabric suppliers, reviewing proposals for 2 new projects that had come in. Jennifer noticed I was checking my phone more than usual, but she didn't comment. Thursday night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Vanessa as a little girl, maybe 7 or 8, running through our old house with Thomas chasing her, both of them laughing. She'd had this high-pitched giggle that made everyone smile. Thomas used to call her his little sunshine. "There's my sunshine," he'd say every morning when she came down for breakfast, and she'd beam at him like he'd given her the greatest compliment in the world. When did that girl disappear? When did she become this woman who measured her worth in Instagram likes and designer labels? Was it after Thomas died? Was it Dylan's influence? Or had I failed her somehow, teaching her by example that money could solve any problem, that love meant never saying no? I was still awake at 2 a.m. when my phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. "Can't sleep either?" I stared at those 3 words for a long time before responding. "No. I keep thinking about Dad. What he'd say about all this." My throat tightened. "What do you think he'd say?" The typing indicator appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, he'd say I messed up. He'd say I took advantage of you. He'd say Dylan and I need to grow up. He'd be right. "I know. Mom, I'm scared. Dylan wants to fight this. He wants to call your bluff, says you'd never actually take us to court. He thinks if we ignore the deadline, you'll back down." I sat up in bed, fully alert now. "Is that what you want to do?" "I don't know what I want. I just know I don't want to lose you, and I don't want to lose my home. But Dylan says we can't afford the payments, that it's impossible." "It's not impossible. It requires sacrifice. There's a difference." A long pause. "He says if I agree to your terms, I'm choosing you over him." There it was, the real issue. Dylan had turned this into a loyalty test, and Vanessa was caught in the middle, paralyzed by the choice. "Vanessa, I'm not asking you to choose between us. I'm asking you to do the right thing, and if Dylan sees basic integrity as a betrayal, then you have bigger problems than this loan." "I know. God, Mom, I know. I don't know what to do." "Yes, you do. You know exactly what to do. The question is whether you're brave enough to do it." She didn't respond after that. I didn't push. I set my phone down and somehow, finally, fell asleep around 4 a.m. Friday morning, I wore my power suit again. Black this time, with a crimson blouse underneath. War colors. I had meetings all morning, forcing myself to focus on clients and designs and everything except the 5 p.m. deadline ticking closer with each passing hour. At 3:30, Richard called. "Have you heard from them?" "Vanessa texted me last night. Dylan wants to ignore the deadline. He thinks I'm bluffing." "Are you?" I thought about that. About whether I could actually follow through with litigation against my own daughter. About standing in a courtroom and testifying against Vanessa and Dylan, making our family dysfunction a matter of public record. "No," I said finally. "I'm not bluffing." "Good, because if they don't respond by 5, we file Monday morning. I'll have the paperwork ready." 4:15, 4:30, 4:45. I sat at my desk, pretending to review a proposal, but the words blurred together. Jennifer knocked once to ask if I needed anything. I shook my head. At 4:53, my office door burst open. No knock, no warning. Just Vanessa, wild-eyed and breathless, still wearing her work clothes, hair disheveled like she'd been running. "I'll do it," she gasped. "Option 2. I'll sign whatever you need. Please, Mom. I'll do it." I stood up slowly. "Where's Dylan?" "At home. He doesn't know I'm here. He thinks I'm still at work." "Mom, he told me not to sign anything, said we should wait you out, that you'd cave eventually because you always do. And I realized he's been counting on that, counting on you being weak, counting on me being too scared to stand up to him." She was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for everything. You were right. About all of it. About Dylan. About how I've treated you. About everything." I walked around my desk, stood in front of her. She looked so young, so lost. My little sunshine, buried under years of bad choices and worse influences. "Vanessa, I need you to understand something. If you sign this, you're committing to 4 years of payments. 4 years of therapy. 4 years of actually working on yourself and your marriage and your relationship with me. This isn't just about the money. This is about whether you're willing to change. I am. I swear I am. I can't keep living like this, Mom. I can't keep pretending everything is fine when I'm drowning in credit card debt and my husband hates my mother and I can't remember the last time I felt like a good person. I pulled her into my arms. She collapsed against me, sobbing like she used to when she was small and something had scared her. I held her tight, stroking her hair, letting her cry. "Okay," I whispered. "Okay, baby. We'll figure this out." I called Richard. He was in his office, waiting. "We're coming now. Can you stay? For you?" "Of course." We took a cab to his office, Vanessa gripping my hand the whole way. She kept apologizing, over and over, until I finally said, "Stop. I know you're sorry. Now, show me." In Richard's office, she signed every document without hesitation. The loan agreement, the payment schedule, the therapy commitment. Her hand shook, but her signature was clear. "What about Dylan?" Richard asked. "He needs to sign too. It's joint property." Vanessa pulled out her phone. "I'll get him here." She dialed, waited. "Dylan, I'm at the lawyer's office downtown. You need to come now." "No, I'm not waiting. Because I already signed, and you need to sign too, or we lose the apartment. Dylan, just get here, please." She hung up, looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. "He's coming. He's furious, but he's coming." "Are you sure about this?" I asked quietly. "About him? Because Vanessa, this is going to get harder before it gets easier. And if Dylan's not willing to do the work, I know he might not be willing, but I have to try. For me, not for him. I have to try to fix what I broke." I squeezed her hand. "Then we'll try together." Dylan arrived 20 minutes later, his face a storm. But when Richard explained that Vanessa had already signed, that the alternative was immediate litigation, and that he was out of options, he picked up the pen. He signed his name with angry, aggressive strokes. Didn't look at me once. But it was done. They had 4 years to pay me back. 6 months of therapy starting next week. And maybe, just maybe, a chance to rebuild what we'd lost. As we left Richard's office, Vanessa hugged me one more time. "Thank you, Mom, for not giving up on me." "I never gave up on you. I just stopped enabling you. There's a difference." I watched them walk away together, Dylan's body language stiff and angry, Vanessa's shoulders bent under the weight of what she'd just committed to. I didn't know if this would work, if therapy could fix what was broken, if Dylan would change, if Vanessa would follow through. But for the first time in 3 years, I had hope, and my dignity back. The first therapy session was scheduled for the following Thursday at 6 p.m. Dr. Sarah Brennan, a family therapist Richard had recommended, had an office in Cambridge with soft gray walls and comfortable chairs that didn't feel too clinical. I arrived 15 minutes early, as usual. Vanessa came 10 minutes early, alone. "Dylan's coming straight from work," she said, not meeting my eyes. It's been a rough week." I nodded. We sat in the waiting room in silence, both pretending to look at our phones. The tension was thick enough to choke on. Dylan arrived at 6:03, still in his work clothes, tie loosened, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. He barely glanced at me before taking the seat farthest from both of us. We waited like that, 3 strangers who happened to share DNA and legal documents, until Dr. Brennan opened her door. She was younger than I expected, maybe 45, with kind eyes and an air of competence that made me relax slightly. Her office was warm, filled with plants and soft lighting. "Thank you all for coming," she said once we'd settled into our seats. "I know this isn't easy. Family therapy rarely is, especially when we're here because of conflict rather than choice. But I appreciate your willingness to try." Dylan crossed his arms. "Let's be clear. I'm here because I have to be. This was a condition of not losing our home." "I understand," Dr. Brennan said calmly. "And that's okay. Sometimes we need external motivation to start difficult conversations. Dylan, can you tell me how you're feeling about being here?" "Ambushed. Manipulated. Like my mother-in-law is using money to force us into this. Forcing you to honor a loan you took and never repaid," I said before I could stop myself. "Helena," Dr. Brennan said gently, "I'd like to hear from Dylan first. We'll have time for everyone." She turned back to him. "Go on." She gave us that money. There was no agreement, no contract, nothing saying we had to pay it back. And now, 3 years later, she's suddenly demanding it with interest? After one missed birthday dinner? It's vindictive. It's cruel. One missed birthday dinner, I repeated, my voice shaking. That's what you think this is about? Isn't it? No, Dylan. It's about 3 years of being treated like an ATM. 3 years of broken promises and fake gratitude. 3 years of you systematically isolating my daughter from me while spending money I gave you in good faith. Helena, Dr. Brennan said again, firmer this time, I need you to hold that thought. We'll get there. Right now, I want to hear from Vanessa. Vanessa, how are you feeling? Vanessa had been crying silently since Dylan spoke. Now she wiped her eyes and took a shaky breath. Guilty, ashamed, angry at myself for letting it get this bad. Angry at Dylan for... She stopped, glanced at her husband. For what? Dr. Brennan prompted. For making me choose. For telling me that if I signed those papers, I was betraying him. For acting like my mom is the villain when I know she's not. She's just tired of being walked on. And I don't blame her. Dylan's face went red. So now I'm the bad guy? I'm the one who's been working 60-hour weeks trying to make enough commission to pay our bills while you're out having lunch with your friends? I'm the one who's been stressed about money while you're buying $300 shoes? With credit cards we can't pay off, Vanessa shot back. With debt that keeps growing because you can't stop pretending we're richer than we are? You're the one who insisted we needed the BMW, the expensive apartment, the designer furniture. Because you're the one who kept saying you deserved nice things. You're the one who didn't want to look poor in front of your college friends. They were yelling now, years of resentment pouring out. Dr. Brennan let it happen for a minute, then raised her hand. Stop. Both of you, stop. She waited until they'd both quieted, breathing hard. What I'm hearing is that you both feel trapped. Trapped by expectations, by debt, by the lifestyle you've built that neither of you can actually afford. Is that accurate? Vanessa nodded miserably. Dylan looked away but didn't disagree. And Helena, Dr. Brennan turned to me. You feel used, taken for granted, like your generosity was exploited rather than appreciated. Yes, I said quietly, exactly that. So we have a family in crisis. A mother who gave freely and now feels betrayed. A daughter who took without thinking and now feels guilty. And a son-in-law who feels blamed for problems he sees as shared. Does that sound right? We all nodded reluctantly. Good. Then let's start with truth. Complete, uncomfortable truth. Helena, I want you to tell Vanessa and Dylan exactly how their behavior has made you feel. Not the loan, not the money. The emotional impact. Can you do that? I took a breath. This was harder than demanding payment. Harder than writing that letter. This required vulnerability I'd been protecting for years. When Thomas died, I started, my voice barely above a whisper. I was terrified. Terrified of being alone. Of losing Vanessa too. Of failing as a mother without him there to balance me. So I compensated. I gave too much. Said yes too often. Never set boundaries because I was so scared of pushing you away that I let you walk all over me instead. Vanessa was crying again, silently. And somewhere along the way, you learned that Mom would always be there. Always say yes. Always bail you out, always forgive. And Dylan, you saw that and you exploited it. You didn't encourage Vanessa to appreciate me or reciprocate or even just call me back. You encouraged distance. You made me the problem, the controlling mother-in-law, when all I was trying to do was stay connected to my daughter. That's not... Dylan started. Let her finish, Doctor, Brennan said firmly. The birthday dinner wasn't the problem. It was the symbol, the proof that I'd become so insignificant in my daughter's life that she could abandon me on my birthday without a second thought, that she could text me a kiss emoji and expect me to just smile and save the cake like I was a convenience store, not a person with feelings, and that Dylan could spend more on one dinner than I'd asked them to spend in 3 years of loan repayment, and neither of you saw the cruelty in that. The room was silent. Vanessa was openly sobbing now. Dylan's jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscles jumping. Vanessa, Dr. Brennan said softly, what's coming up for you? She's right, Vanessa choked out. She's right about everything. I did take her for granted. I did let Dylan convince me she was being controlling when she was just trying to stay in my life. I did treat her like she'd always be there, no matter how badly I behaved, and I hate myself for it. Dylan? He was quiet for a long moment. Then, reluctantly, I didn't like feeling like we owed her. Like everything we had came from her generosity. It made me feel like less of a man, less of a provider. So yeah, maybe I did push Vanessa to distance herself. Maybe I did make Helena seem like the problem because it was easier than admitting I was failing to support my wife on my own. It was the first honest thing I'd heard him say. Dr. Brennan nodded. That's good, Dylan. That's real vulnerability. Now, here's what I'm seeing. Helena, you used money as a substitute for setting emotional boundaries. You gave and gave because you were afraid that saying no would mean losing love. Vanessa, you took and took because you learned that mom's love was unconditional, which you translated as without consequences. And Dylan, you resented Helena's generosity because it highlighted your own financial insecurity. So you tried to eliminate the source of that discomfort by cutting her out. She looked at each of us in turn. You're all responsible. Not equally, maybe, but all complicit in creating this dynamic. And that means you all have to do the work to fix it. The session lasted another 40 minutes. We talked about expectations, about communication, about the difference between enabling and supporting. By the end, we were all exhausted, but something had shifted. Some small crack in the wall we'd built between us. As we left, Vanessa touched my arm. Mom, can we talk? Just us? Dylan glanced between us, then nodded. I'll wait in the car. We stood in the parking lot, the November air cold against our faces. Vanessa wrapped her arms around herself. I need to tell you something, she said. Dylan and I have been fighting. A lot. Since I signed the agreement. He's angry that I went behind his back, angry that we're in therapy, angry about the payments. Last night he said maybe we should separate for a while. My heart clenched. Oh, honey. And I realized something. I realized I was more scared of losing you than losing him. Which is messed up, right? I should be more scared of my marriage ending than my relationship with my mother. Not if your marriage is toxic and your mother is the one who actually loves you unconditionally. She laughed wetly. I don't deserve unconditional love. Not after how I've treated you. That's exactly when you need it most. Vanessa, I'm angry at you. I'm hurt. But I never stopped loving you, not for 1 second. That's what unconditional means. It doesn't mean no consequences. It means the love is still there, underneath everything else. She hugged me then, really hugged me, clinging like she used to when she was small. I held her tight, breathing in the coconut scent of her shampoo, feeling her heart beat against mine. I'm going to fix this, she whispered. I'm going to fix me. I promise. We'll fix it together. The next few weeks were hard, brutally hard. The first payment was due on the 1st of the month, and Dylan sent it with a transaction note that just said, Payment 1 of 48. No message, no acknowledgement. Just proof of transfer. But Vanessa started coming over for lunch every other Saturday. Just her, no Dylan. We'd sit at my kitchen table and talk, really talk, about things we'd been avoiding for years. She told me about the credit card debt, nearly $32,000 that she'd been hiding. About how Dylan had pressured her to keep up appearances, to post perfect photos on Instagram, to pretend they had more money than they did. I was so ashamed, she said one afternoon, picking at her salad. Ashamed that I needed your help. Ashamed that we couldn't make it on our own. Ashamed that everyone else our age seemed to have it together and we were drowning. So I just pretended harder, posted better photos, bought nicer clothes on credit, and avoided you because you were the one person who could see through it. I could see through it because I love you, not because I was judging you. I know that now. I didn't then. Therapy continued. Some sessions were productive, with all of us actually communicating. Others were disasters, with Dylan shutting down or getting defensive, with Vanessa crying, with me biting my tongue to keep from saying things I couldn't take back. But slowly, painfully, we made progress. In session 4, Dylan admitted that he'd been pressuring Vanessa to have a baby, thinking that would fix things between them. Dr. Brennan gently explained that babies don't fix broken relationships. They just add stress to them. In session 6, Vanessa confessed that she'd been avoiding me because I reminded her of her father, of the life she'd had before he died, of the person she used to be before grief and insecurity twisted her into someone she didn't recognize. In session 8, I admitted that I'd been using money as control, as a way to keep Vanessa close because I was terrified of being alone. That my generosity wasn't entirely selfless, it was partially selfish, a way to make myself indispensable. By session 10, in late January, we'd established something resembling honest communication. We were still damaged, still healing, but we were actually talking, actually listening. And then Dylan made a choice. He came to session 11 alone with Vanessa. They sat close together, holding hands, and both looked nervous. "We need to tell you something," Vanessa said. "Dylan's been offered a promotion, senior sales manager at a dealership in Connecticut. It's a significant raise, about $40,000 more a year, but we'd have to move." My stomach dropped. "How far?" 2 hours, maybe a little more depending on traffic. "When?" "They need him by March 1st, so 6 weeks." I looked at Dylan. He met my eyes for the first time in weeks. "I know this complicates things, the therapy, the payments, everything, but Helena, this is a real opportunity. With this salary, we can actually get ahead, pay you back faster, get out of debt, live like actual adults instead of pretending on credit cards. And you want my blessing?" Vanessa squeezed Dylan's hand. "We want to know if you'll let us adjust the agreement. Keep the same total amount, keep the same interest, but maybe extend the timeline so the monthly payments are lower. Give us breathing room to actually save, to actually change our lives." Dr. Brennan was watching me carefully. "Helena, what are you feeling right now?" "Scared," I admitted. "Scared that if they move away, we'll lose this progress, that we'll go back to canceled plans and broken promises, just with Connecticut as the excuse instead of Dylan's schedule." "That's a valid fear," Dr. Brennan said. "Vanessa, how do you respond to that?" "I'm scared too," Vanessa said. "Scared that you'll think I'm running away. But Mom, I promise I'm not. I want to keep doing this work. We can do video therapy sessions. I can come visit you twice a month. We can make it work if we both try." I looked at my daughter, at the dark circles under her eyes from stress, at the way she held Dylan's hand like he was a life raft, at the genuine fear in her expression that I might say no. "Okay," I said finally. "Okay, let's adjust the agreement. Extend it to 60 months instead of 48. That'll lower the monthly payment to about $1,900. And you're right, with the raise, you can actually afford that and still save." Vanessa's face crumpled with relief. Thank you, Mom. But I need a promise, not from Dylan, from you, that you'll keep showing up. That distance won't become an excuse to disappear again. I promise. I swear on Dad's memory. I promise." And I believed her. Maybe I was an idiot. Maybe I was setting myself up for disappointment. But I believed her, because she was my daughter, my little sunshine. And despite everything, despite the pain and the betrayal and the years of being taken for granted, I still loved her more than anything in this world. And that's what mothers do. We love. We hope. We give second chances, even when we probably shouldn't. We try. 8 months later, I stood in my kitchen on my 57th birthday, staring at a cake that wasn't my own creation. It was lopsided, the frosting unevenly spread, with chocolate ganache dripping down one side more than the other. But it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen, because Vanessa had made it, by herself, from scratch. She'd driven 2 hours from Connecticut that morning, texted me at 7 a.m. that she was on her way, and showed up at my door at 9:30, carrying a cake box and wearing an apologetic smile. "It's not as good as yours," she said immediately. "The layers are uneven, and I think I overbaked it a little. But I followed your recipe, the one you used to make for me every year." I pulled her into a hug, careful not to jostle the cake box. "It's perfect." And it was. Not because of how it looked, but because of what it represented. Effort, thought, reciprocity. We spent the morning together, just the two of us. She told me about the new house they'd bought in Connecticut, a modest 3-bedroom that cost significantly less than their Boston apartment had, about how Dylan was thriving in his new position, less stressed, more present, about how they'd paid off $8,000 in credit card debt in the past 6 months. "We sold the BMW," she said, laughing a little, "bought a used Honda Accord. Dylan hated it at first, but now he admits it's a relief not to have that payment. We're actually saving money, Mom. For the first time in our marriage, we have an emergency fund. I'm proud of you, I said, and meant it. We made the August payment last week. That's payment number 8. Only 52 to go. She said it without resentment, just as fact. I know it's a long time, but honestly, it's been good for us. Having that obligation, that accountability, it keeps us honest about our spending. The doorbell rang at noon. I wasn't expecting anyone else, but when I opened the door, Dylan stood there holding a small wrapped box and looking uncomfortable. "Can I come in?" he asked. I stepped aside. Vanessa looked surprised, but not unhappy to see him. "I know I wasn't invited," Dylan said quickly, "but I wanted to be here, wanted to give you this." He held out the box. I took it, unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a simple silver bracelet with an inscription, "To Helena, with gratitude and respect, Dylan." I looked up at him, surprised. "I've been an ass," he said bluntly. "For years, I was insecure and defensive, and I took it out on you. I made Vanessa feel like she had to choose between us. I treated your generosity like it was weakness, and I'm sorry. I'm really, genuinely sorry. It wasn't a perfect apology. It didn't erase 3 years of hurt, but it was honest, and it was a start." "Thank you," I said quietly. "This means a lot." Dr. Brennan helped me see a lot of things. About myself, about how I was raised, about why I react to money and generosity the way I do. My dad used to hold things over our heads, you know? Every dollar he gave came with strings. I think I assumed you were doing the same thing, and I resented it before you even had a chance to prove you weren't. "But I did do the same thing," I said. "Maybe not intentionally, but I used money to maintain connection. That wasn't fair either. Maybe, but you also just loved your daughter and wanted to help. I should have respected that instead of resenting it." Vanessa was crying again, but happy tears this time. "Can we just eat cake and stop being so emotional? I didn't put on waterproof mascara." We laughed, all 3 of us together, genuine laughter that felt like healing. We ate the lopsided cake, and it was slightly dry, just like Vanessa had worried. But we ate every crumb, praising her effort, teasing her gently about the uneven layers. Dylan told stories about their new neighbors, about the couple next door with 3 kids who'd welcome them with homemade cookies. Vanessa showed me photos of the house, of the small garden she was starting, of the reading nook she'd created in the spare bedroom. They left at 4, both of them hugging me goodbye. As I watched them drive away, Dylan's used Honda Accord disappearing down the street, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not because everything was perfect. We still had 4 years and 4 months of payments ahead of us. We still had work to do in therapy, wounds that weren't fully healed. Dylan and I would probably never be close, but we'd found mutual respect, and that was enough. But Vanessa was back in my life, really in my life, not just orbiting the edges. She called twice a week, visited twice a month, sent photos and updates, and asked for advice. She'd stopped posting every meal on Instagram, stopped measuring her worth in likes and designer labels. She was becoming the person I'd always known she could be. And I'd learned something too. I'd learned that boundaries weren't walls, that saying no didn't mean losing love, that real relationships required reciprocity, not just endless giving from one side. The following Tuesday, I had lunch with my friend Margaret, someone I'd known since college. I told her the whole story, from the birthday cake to the legal ultimatum to where we were now. "You did the right thing," she said firmly. "I know it was hard. I know you second-guessed yourself. But Helena, you taught your daughter that actions have consequences. That's not cruelty. That's love. It didn't feel like love at the time. The best parenting rarely does. You gave her what she needed, not what she wanted. That's harder, but it's better." I thought about that a lot over the next few weeks, about the difference between enabling and supporting, about how Thomas would have been proud of me for finally standing up for myself, even though it took his death and 8 years of mistakes to get there. On Thanksgiving, Vanessa and Dylan came to Boston. They stayed with me in my apartment for the whole weekend. Dylan helped me cook the turkey, following instructions carefully, asking questions. Vanessa made her now famous lopsided cake for dessert, this time pumpkin spice, and it was slightly less dry than the birthday version. On Saturday morning, I found an envelope on my kitchen counter. Inside was a check for an extra $1,000 beyond their regular payment and a note in Vanessa's handwriting. Mom, Dylan got his Q4 bonus. We talked about it and decided to put it toward the loan. We know it's just one extra payment, but it felt important to show you that we're committed. Not because we have to be, but because we want to be. We want to make this right. Thank you for not giving up on me. I love you. V. I held that note for a long time, reading it over and over. Then I put it in my desk drawer with the other important documents I kept. Proof that hard things could lead to good things, that sometimes love meant being tough, that families could break and heal and become stronger in the broken places. That night, the three of us sat in my living room, drinking wine and watching a movie. It was ordinary, comfortable, normal in the best possible way. Mom, Vanessa said during a commercial break, I've been thinking. When we finish the payments, in 4 years, I want to do something special. A trip, maybe. The three of us. Somewhere Dad always wanted to go. He always wanted to see Scotland, I said. The Highlands. He had this romantic idea about castles and lochs and his ancestry. Then Scotland it is. In 4 years, when the debt is paid and we've done the work and we're actually healthy again, we go to Scotland to honor Dad and to celebrate us. Dylan nodded. I like that. It gives us something to work toward. 4 years, I said softly. A lot can happen in 4 years. It already has, Vanessa said. Look at us. 8 months ago, we weren't speaking. Now we're planning international trips. If we can do that, we can do anything. She was right. We could. Because the hardest work was already done. Not the payments, not the therapy sessions, but the choice to try. The choice to be honest, the choice to value relationship over pride. I looked at my daughter, curled up on my couch with Dylan's arm around her, and I saw my little sunshine again. Not the shallow, entitled woman she'd become in her 20s, but the girl she'd been and the woman she was becoming. Strong, self-aware, grateful. It had taken a birthday cake and a legal ultimatum and months of painful confrontation to get here. But we'd made it. And that was worth every difficult moment. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the truth, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts. Because on the other side of that hurt is something real, something solid, something that can't be shaken by forgotten birthdays or canceled lunches, or the casual cruelties of taking someone for granted. On the other side is love, real love, the kind that lasts. And in the end, that's all that matters.